whether it ever makes it up to 75.
Ed, before I let you go, this yesterday was categorized as a marginal Category 5 storm. A Category 5 storm is the most severe hurricane that you can record. Does Gloria maintain that status this morning? And if it does, could you explain for just a minute what a Category 5 storm can do, what its destructive power is?
Well, first off, it is not a Category 5 anymore.
All right, that's good news, isn't it?
Right, it's a Category 3. It's a pretty strong one, and it was real marginal, them putting it into the Category 5. It never actually met all the criteria needed to be a Category 5 storm, but they were, I think, trying to get everybody to realize how dangerous a storm this really was, and took what was really a 4 and made it a 5.
And now you say it's down to a 3.
Right, it is a 3 storm. The winds meet the Category 3, and so does the central barometric pressure. So it is really a Category 3 storm right now.
All right, let's try to put this in perspective. How many Category 3 hurricanes have come into this area over the past 10, 15 years?
Over the past 10, 15 years, we're probably talking that none that strong have actually come into this area.
All right, so this is still nothing to poo-poo. This is clearly a vicious storm, but it's not going to be the enormous storm that had originally been predicted.
Right, we're not talking the strongest storm in history. We're talking something in the top 5 or 10.
All right, that's the latest from Ed Adams at AccuWeather. Interesting news this morning in that the pace of Gloria is picking up. Apparently she's anxious to get to somewhere quickly, and hopefully that somewhere is out of our area, up into the Long Island area, and eventually back out into the Atlantic Ocean. She should hit the Jersey coastal area at about 11 o'clock now, between 10 and 11, instead of noon to 1, as had been originally forecasted. When I say originally, I mean this morning, because even as late as last night, AccuWeather was predicting that Gloria would hit the Jersey shore as early as 6 o'clock. Then that got pushed ahead to noon. Now it's back to between 10 and 11. She is quickening her pace, and the wind velocity has now been degraded within the immediate Philadelphia area. So some relatively encouraging news about Gloria as we now hit 7 o'clock and a bit beyond. We'll be back with more on this special edition of Action News in just a minute.
This is an Action News special report, a hurricane update. Now here's Jim Gardner.
The time, 7:05 on this Friday morning. Hurricane Gloria, obviously our big story this morning. For those of you who are now tuning in around the breakfast table, wondering whether you have school or not today, my advice to you is call your school district and find out, but we can give you something of an overview. Almost 200,000 students in the Philadelphia public school system are not expected in class today. The Philadelphia parochial school system is also closed. Public schools in Camden County are also closed. I'm not sure about parochial schools in Camden County. Maybe we can check on that up in the newsroom and give you that in just a couple of minutes. We should know that by now, but I apologize, we don't, but we'll nail that down in just a second. Of course, school districts along the Jersey and Delaware coastal areas are all shut down, and our assumption is that virtually all school districts in our entire coverage area are closed. Call, find out for yourself. They'll be answering the switchboard, presumably. If they're not, I guess one can assume that there is no school today. That's the situation as far as that's concerned. Action News reporter Gary Majors, who would normally be sitting in this chair this morning, has taken it upon himself to venture out into the cruel elements, shaded perhaps by the comfort of an apartment on the 27th floor of the Palace Hotel overlooking Ben Franklin Parkway, but he does have an excellent vantage point of traffic coming into the Philadelphia off the river drives. Gary, what's the latest from there?
Well, first, Jim, it is nice to be outdoors for a change in the early morning hours, and we can tell you right now that traffic is beginning to pick up in the Delaware Valley, the wind is beginning to pick up here in Center City, and the rain is coming down a little bit harder. We're showing you shots right now of the Vine Street extension as traffic is moving along at a steady pace coming into Center City. Obviously, that traffic will go along Vine Street to branch off to the streets to the side, and the Ben Franklin Parkway as well is picking up traffic also at this hour. One thing we'd like to impress upon our viewers, you said a few minutes ago that the storm probably will whisk through here at a faster pace and earlier, as earlier predicted, that is, and it may be an indication that more and more people are going to venture out. However, the city is not going to take any chances. They have still imposed their emergency preparedness plans in case Gloria decides to change her mind, as she has been doing for the last couple of hours. So we can tell you this, the Red Cross shelters will be open in case you need them. Also, additional rescue squads will be out on the street in case there are emergencies. Also, we tell you this morning that no trash will be picked up in Philadelphia. Don't set your cans outside. Although the winds will be somewhat less as they are predicting right now, it is still enough force to knock those cans into your personal property or even hurt someone who may be walking down the street. If you have any questions about city services that are going to be available, you can call the City Hall switchboard. Let me give you that number, 686-1776. Again, that number is 686-1776. You can call that. That's the city switchboard. And if there's any questions about any city agencies and their operations today, you can call that number. One final note we'd like to add here, although the storm has been somewhat played up a little bit, or played off a little bit, we should say, at the south, still keep those emergency devices on hand. For instance, all your battery-powered equipment, flashlights, radios, televisions, make sure they're in operating condition and make sure the batteries are new or in pretty good shape. Also, do yourself a favor, and if you can stay home, do so, because it's getting pretty wicked out here. Reporting live on the Action Cam from the 24th floor of the Palace Hotel, I'm Gary Majors, Channel 6 Action News.
All right, Gary, thank you very much. We are getting now breaking information as it comes into the Action Newsroom. We're passing it along to you. This is fresh. There has now been a mandatory evacuation order for all low-lying areas in Monmouth County, New Jersey. Just to the south, mandatory evacuations of Brick, Stafford, and Long Beach, low-lying areas in those townships in Ocean County. And Beach Haven, of course, is part of that area. We have Sergeant James McCaffrey from the Beach Haven Police. Sergeant, we have just understood that there are some mandatory evacuations going on in your area.
We're not really sure if there's mandatory or not, but we advise everybody that's on Long Beach Island to get off now because it'll probably be your last chance.
When you say a last chance, why did you wait until 7 o'clock or thereabouts to put this evacuation status into high gear?
We have to wait for the county coordinators to come down with the evacuation status. Last night they had an urgent message for everybody to get off, but they didn't want to make it mandatory.
Is the police department helping out with these evacuations, or are you leaving it up to individuals to get into their cars and take off?
Well, people that can drive their vehicles off, we urge them to drive their vehicles off. If otherwise, we have transportation available to get them part way up the island, and then hopefully we can get some other trucks to get them off the island.
All right, let's be very clear about this. This is a way we can render some public service to residents of Beach Haven and the entire Ocean County area where these mandatory evacuations are now in effect. If someone is unable to drive, if someone is disabled, if someone is elderly, who did they call? Whom did they call specifically to gain assistance in evacuating their homes?
Okay, they would have to call the local police departments. We have the Beach Haven Police Department here, Long Beach Township Police Department, Ship Bottom, Surf City, and Harvey Cedars.
All right, let me ask you a question, sir. You are there, you are near the ocean. Can you describe the scene for us?
Okay, the ocean is, we're approaching high tide in the ocean right now, and the waves are lapping at a couple of street ends, ready to break through.
Ready to break through into the streets of Beach Haven?
Just about, yes.
Obviously a precarious situation. How many people are you talking about when you're talking about evacuations?
Our wintertime population on the whole island is between 10 and 14,000 people, and I would say 95% of those people are gone. 90%,
95% of those people are gone.
Yes.
All right, that's the situation from Sergeant James McCaffrey from the Beach Haven Police. Again, mandatory evacuations now in Beach Haven, in Brick, Stafford, Long Beach, on Long Beach Island, also low-lying areas to the north in Monmouth County, New Jersey. We are now seeing, obviously, a change in status here in the evacuation situation up and down the barrier islands of New Jersey. Last night, the National Weather Service at about 8 or 9 o'clock strongly recommended evacuations from low-lying areas. It was much later than that when Governor Tom Kean declared a state of emergency and gave full powers to the state police and Colonel Clinton Pagano to do whatever they had to do to ensure the safety of residents of the barrier islands in that area. And now, as we break out into the early morning hours of this Friday, the day that Gloria is expected to hit this area with full force, we are seeing mandatory evacuations, the latest, Brick, Stafford, and Long Beach, and even to the north in Monmouth County. Cathy Gandolfo is now live on the boardwalk of Atlantic City. Cathy, we have yet to hear about mandatory evacuations in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Might that come next, or do you think that Atlantic City will try to avoid that?
Jim, I'm still of the belief that the city will try to avoid that. Now, I should point out that at 7:30 this morning, there will be a press briefing at City Hall here in Atlantic City. So the questions I know will be asked, and we will know better after that exactly what city officials are planning. Again, Jim, they are starting to lose the roads. So if any major evacuation would take place at this point, it would have to be done relatively quickly. And I'm not really sure at this point that it could be done. Certainly a lot of people are still leaving on their own, but whether there will be a concerted effort to try and get everyone off this island remains to be seen. I just think at this point that there are too many people on this island, and people are just going to be at the shelters, higher ground, and will be waiting out the storm.
All right, well, why don't you describe the situation around you, Cathy? You've done such a good job throughout this entire broadcast, giving us a clear picture verbally to go along with the pictures that we're seeing about the sense that you have, the atmospheric sense, the surf as it begins to come up. Do that again, if you would, because it gives us a very clear idea of what exactly
well, Jim,
the sense is in Atlantic City.
Excuse me. Certainly, now that it is getting light, the pictures can really speak for themselves. If you zoom in on the ocean there, it is certainly a very vicious Atlantic Ocean out there this morning. The waves are coming in on an angle from the northeast. They have been slamming into the boardwalk pretty regularly now. We have hit high tide about 45 minutes ago. So if it's any consolation, as Mother Nature would have it, the tide should be going out a little bit. But of course, with this horrendous storm that is out there, as you can see there, the waves lapping against the boardwalk, there is going to be certainly considerable flooding in the low-lying areas just from those high tides. And again, the rain has been steady. It is not coming down quite as heavily as it had been for the last couple of hours, but certainly doesn't look as though it is about to stop anytime soon.
Cathy, Mayor James Ussery last night was manning his station at City Hall throughout the evening and late into the night. Can we assume that the mayor is there now, has retaken his station at City Hall, and is now monitoring all situations in Atlantic City? Do you know for a fact that he is at City Hall?
Yes, Jim. I called over to City Hall a short while ago, and I talked to one of the mayor's assistants. I asked exactly where the mayor was. He said the mayor was in his office and was collecting his thoughts. I imagine certainly that the mayor is pretty tired, as a lot of other people in this town are, and up and down the Jersey coast. He was probably perhaps just catching 40 winks, if you would, just relaxing a little bit. I'm sure that if we don't hear from him directly at this news conference at 7:30, I'm sure that he will be up in his office and continue to monitor the situation as he has been doing all night.
Cathy Gandolfo reporting live from the boardwalk in Atlantic City. Thank you, Cathy. Stand by. We'll be checking back with you very soon. We have just clarified the parochial school situation in Camden County. We suspected that all Camden County parochial schools would be closed. That's not necessarily the case. The situation, or the decision, is up to each principal of each parochial school in Camden, and so if you go to a Camden County Catholic school, you better call to find out if your school will be open or closed. We cannot make a blanket statement one way or the other about the entire Diocese of Camden. Again, call your principal to make sure what is the status of your own school. In Philadelphia, parochial schools are closed, as are Philadelphia public schools. Public schools in Camden are also closed. We'll be back with more information and the latest coverage of Hurricane Gloria as she makes her way up the east coast of the United States, the target, the Delaware Valley, and the Jersey and Delaware coastlines. We'll be back in just a minute. Fortunately, we have had few reports to this point of any injuries as a result of Hurricane Gloria's approach, but right now we do have a problem on City Line Avenue near Monument Roads in Philadelphia. We are live outside there at the scene. As you can see, police and fire vehicles have arrived just minutes ago. There is what is being described as a bad accident right on City Line Avenue. It appears to be in the direction from going into the city, in the direction towards the Schuylkill Expressway. The other lanes seem to be moving quite freely, but on the other side you see the big fire engine there, and fire assistance in an accident oftentimes means that people are trapped in their vehicles. Perhaps they need fire rescue squads. More police vehicles arriving on the scene. We do not know the extent of the accident, the seriousness of the accident, but by looking at these pictures, clearly it seems to be a serious one. We will try to report to you as quickly as we can the extent of injuries, hopefully no fatalities, but the first major accident that we are aware of. In the course of this storm, I see some smoke rising up from that area. I think that is smoke. It seems to be a haze in the center of the screen, and that may mean some kind of a car fire. But that is the situation on City Line Avenue as we see it right now. Obviously, we'll update this in just a couple of minutes. As far as mass transit is concerned, we think the situation is far better than what we just saw on City Line Avenue. Karen Friedman is once again live at the 69th Street Terminal in Upper Darby. Karen, can you update us on any problems that SEPTA may be having at this hour?
Yes, Jim. Actually, not much has changed here other than it's raining a little bit harder and it has gotten a lot lighter out. But there has been a steady stream of people going in and out of the 69th Street station since we arrived at about 5:30 this morning. We are told, as of right now, everything is running. There are, however, some delays, and SEPTA is asking that you please be patient. If you do have a problem in terms of you're not sure what's running and if you're going to be on schedule for work, if you are going to work, you may want to give them a call, but I was in the office a little while ago. The phones are ringing off the hook. There is only one person in there trying to answer everything. She's doing the best that she can, and hopefully she will be able to accommodate you. So as of right now, everything is running, including the trolleys, and even here on Market Street, which you can't see, but it's in front of me, there seems to be a steady stream of cars as well. So that is the update from here. I'm at the 69th Street station. I'm Karen Friedman reporting live on the Action Cam.
Karen, before you go, can we punch up Karen once again? I don't mean to ask you questions that you may or may not be able to answer because I know the situation is so fluid at this time. We have concentrated so far on the city transit division, the buses, the trolleys, the subways, the Market Frankfurt L. Have you heard anything at all yet about the commuter rail lines?
Not a whole lot, Jim, other than what we were reporting before, and I believe a little bit earlier. The situation was that they were asking you, if I can check here, my notebook's a little
Sure,
bit
go
red.
ahead.
They were asking you that to ride the Chestnut Hill East. The Chestnut Hill West was not in service. The other things we had was there was no Norristown train, but the Route 100 was working. And one final thing, the Media Westchester line, we were also told was not in operation this morning, but that is all we have. The problem seems to be coordinating all this information because they're still trying to get people into work and trying to figure out, Jim, exactly what they're going to keep running and what they're not going to keep running. They say that they will keep everything running unless they have problems with flooding, and that is something that they're still checking into at this point.
Of course, on those commuter rail lines, ordinarily, some of the beds over the bridges are precarious. We've heard SEPTA Board Chairman Lewis Gould tell us so many times that that bridges, the SEPTA bridges over which the commuter rail lines travel, are in precarious shape. Not that they are unsafe, but that they are in need of maintenance. And clearly, with 5 or 8 inches of rain, those things could become a problem, perhaps as the day goes on, and we'll be keeping track of that. But as you say, except for those 2 instances, the commuter rail lines are running, and we have just been told that the PATCO high-speed line is also, this is not a SEPTA situation, but the PATCO high-speed line is also on time at this hour. So by and large, mass transit going pretty well.
Okay, Jim, also, if I may, what they told me is that every half hour they have been getting calls, they meaning the people at the information office at SEPTA, and their supervisors call them to give them an update. We get the update from those people. We should have another update, hopefully in the next 15 minutes, where we may even have a better handle on if anything else is shutting down or staying open or what have you.
Would my assumption be right when I think that the commuter rush hour will be extended for a longer period than normal? Usually by 8:30 it's more or less over with, given the rain, given the apprehension on the part of people coming into the city to work in the face of all the wind and the rain. Can we expect the rush hour to go longer than it normally would?
Your assumption is absolutely right. Part of the problem is because of the rain and the situation, everything is running a little bit later, and also, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, you do have flooding problems at some of the stations, and that again is delaying the transportation this morning.
And I wouldn't be surprised if people are waiting just a little bit longer to go to work. I mean, if you can tell your boss that there were 8 inches of rain coming down and you could get another 15-20 minutes around a cup of coffee, maybe you would take that opportunity to relax for just a minute. Thank you, Karen, very much. We'll get back to you in just a couple of minutes. Dave Roberts now outside live on the Channel 6 Action Cam, taking the protection of his Channel 6 umbrella. Dave, maybe you can help us in 2 things. Number 1, you are near the scene of that accident.
Right.
And 2, you are in the elements themselves, and you've been in touch with AccuWeather recently. What's the story on both fronts?
Well, let's deal with the accident first, Jim. From this vantage point, I've yet to be able to run down to the corner to get a look at what's happening. There were a couple of fire engines that were in the vicinity. An ambulance was also on the scene. The ambulance, one of the paramedic rescue teams, one of their trucks just pulled away minutes ago. I could not see if there was anybody in that truck as they passed us here on City Line Avenue. So we do have a couple of police cars. Traffic seems to be moving around, whatever involvements there are there at the accident scene. It's difficult from this vantage point with all of the rain and complete cloud cover and everything to see, but we're going to go down there in just a couple of seconds and try to check it out right on the scene. But traffic seems to be moving around there. I am surprised at the amount of traffic that is out this morning. A lot of people are around and about moving, and from this vantage point the rain continues as heavy as it was last night at about 1 or 1:30 in the morning when we were out here, I should say earlier this morning, and the winds are now starting to kick up. From time to time I have difficulty holding on to the umbrella and managing the microphone. Every now and then you get a pretty good wind gust, so you can feel the winds starting to build. So the strong stuff is definitely on the way. As the winds will continue to build and build throughout the early morning hours, the rain is just going to continue to pour. Let's take a look at some footage earlier this morning when Gloria kind of pounded North Carolina, some sections. You can see some of the fury of this storm as it pounded the North Carolina shore. Let us pinpoint for you the exact location within 10 minutes ago on the line with AccuWeather and the weather satellites and color radar and so forth. These are scenes from North Carolina within the past 2 or 3 hours. Let us pinpoint now the exact location of Hurricane Gloria. She is now located some 50 miles east of Norfolk, Virginia. Put that in a little better perspective when we're talking about Ocean City, Maryland, some 90 miles south of Ocean City, Maryland. She still has top winds of 130 miles per hour. It is traveling more on a northerly course now at 25 miles per hour. Now, as far as the timetable is concerned, when this storm will feel the strongest effects of it in both Atlantic City and Philadelphia, AccuWeather is now saying about 11 o'clock this morning for Atlantic City. Top winds up to 100 miles per hour. So the strength in what we had talked about yesterday, last night, early through this morning seems to be maintaining itself as the storm remains over coastal waters. As far as Philadelphia, about noontime, and strong winds there, yes, 60 to 75 miles per hour in the immediate Philadelphia area. That is a little bit of a downgrade from what we were saying last night. But when you're dropping from 75 to 60, you're still talking about the severity of a storm here. As you mentioned earlier, it is still graded 3, and anything graded 3 on the hurricane scale is an extremely dangerous storm. Of course, 5 being the top on that scale, but 3 is an extremely dangerous storm. That's the very latest that we have from AccuWeather. I'm going to run on down to the corner here. Let me take one quick look visually. I see still a couple of flashing fire engines, a couple of police cars on the scene. The ambulance seems to have left. Now, whether or not they took someone with them or whether or not someone is still at the scene is hard to say. The latest reports from there indicate there were 2-car collision, Eddie. 2 cars collided, and there's someone inside the car. One inside the car, and one has been apparently taken. We're going to go down there and check it out ourselves visually. Ed Roberts, one of our camera guys, was just down there seconds ago and just got back. So that's the latest on City Line. The rains continue very, very hard, and the winds are really starting to kick up. We'll check out the accident scene for you, Jim, and have the latest, of course, from AccuWeather on the movement of the storm. I'm Dave Roberts, live on City Line Avenue.
Dave, you'll be gratified to hear that we just checked with police while you were giving your report. There are no serious injuries in that accident. As you say, there may be one person still in the automobile, but at least as far as police are concerned, there are no serious accidents. But if you would, why don't you go down there and check for yourself and report back to us when you can.
All right, Jim.
Thank you, David. Let's go back to some pictures at the Jersey Shore. This is an area that is going to be particularly hard hit by what is now graded as a Category 3 hurricane, making its way up the coast of the United States in North Carolina, Virginia, moving up into Maryland now, and the next stop, Delaware and New Jersey. These the pictures of a building surf right off the boardwalk of Atlantic City, New Jersey. If you were standing with your back to Convention Hall, this is what you would see, an ominous-looking surf which is making its way up the beach. There, I presume, is the boardwalk. Yes, it is, with police vehicles making their rounds. I assume what they're trying to do is just make sure that, one, no one is on the boardwalk. Can we go back to that live picture for a second? Is that possible? Okay, we can't, but obviously the police are trying to make sure that no people are making their way down the boardwalk, because that would be obviously a dangerous situation. And I think probably they are beginning to survey potential damage to the boardwalk itself. There's very little they can do to repair any damage during the height of the storm, but police making the rounds of the boardwalk of Atlantic City to make sure that it is clear of all pedestrians. I can't imagine any pedestrian who would want to venture out onto that area right now, but you never know. Police to try to make sure that it doesn't happen. All right, we have Hank Sperka now live on the phone. Hank is in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and as we indicated to you before, Hank is situated in our southernmost station for our team of Action News reporters. He will feel the brunt of the storm before anybody else does. Hank, you're in Rehoboth Beach. What is the situation there now?
Jim, Rehoboth Beach Mayor John Hughes has ordered the evacuation of residents who live 300 feet from the boardwalk, as well as those who live in the low-lying areas where flooding is expected. Using the mayor's words, the situation at Rehoboth Beach is grave, since we are in the direct path of the hurricane with full intensity winds of 100 to 130 miles per hour. The mayor says he expects power outages, uprooting of trees, and says we are in a situation here where lives are threatened. And for that reason, those people who have not yet left their homes are urged to do so now while they can and come to Convention Hall in Rehoboth Beach for safe shelter. After 8 o'clock, the mayor says the people should stay put in their homes because he does not feel it would be safe for them to move outside from one area to another. We expect the full brunt of the hurricane until around noon. Rehoboth Beach planned for the worst, and it looks like they're going to get it. Hank Sperka, Channel 6 Action News, reporting live from Rehoboth Beach.
And we will be back with more information as we continue to update the story of Gloria on the special edition of Action News in just a minute. As Hurricane Gloria makes its way into the Delaware Valley and the Jersey and Delaware coastlines, it is now pouring outside in most areas of our coverage area, one of those soaking rains that you can feel in your skin and bones. And that, of course, makes driving to work extremely difficult, and rush hour traffic is now becoming a problem on the Schuylkill Expressway. Let's go to Gary Majors live, who is staked out near the Ben Franklin Parkway. He has a vantage point of the Schuylkill itself. Gary, how bad is it?
Well, Jim, it's very hard to tell at this time. We're on the 24th floor of the Palace Hotel just off the Ben Franklin Parkway, out of our camera range, but off to my right and your left is the Schuylkill Expressway. It is bumper-to-bumper traffic. At the same time, if you look down here right at the Ben Franklin Parkway, you see very few cars. Now, normally for this time of the morning at 7:30, traffic is pretty heavy along that particular artery. And in fact, as we pan around this area and look at many of the major arteries and side streets coming into Center City, traffic right now is very scarce. One thing we want to impress upon our viewers is the fact that we said this storm is going to be coming through the Delaware Valley just a little bit faster than we originally predicted, or at least AccuWeather predicted. But we don't want them to take that storm for granted. The conditions are still very dangerous, and if you can avoid driving this morning or even staying at home, it might not be a bad idea. One thing we'd also like to say is that a lot of community organizations, a lot of state, local, and federal offices have very weird hours, so to speak, at this as the storm comes through the Delaware Valley. So the one thing we'd like to suggest to people as they think about commuting into Center City this morning or anywhere else in the Delaware Valley or Jersey area is to call that organization or call your office and make sure that that office is not going to be in operation, or it's going to have some different hours as a result of this storm. One final thing we'd like to say is that it is raining very heavily right here in Center City. The wind is beginning to pick up, but by no means do we want any of our viewers to take this storm for granted. I'm Gary Majors, Channel 6 Action News, reporting live on the Action Cam from Center City.
Thank you, Gary. As we've been telling you since 6 o'clock this morning, what was a suggested evacuation last night by the National Weather Service has turned into mandatory evacuations along much of the Jersey coastline this morning. We reported to you mandatory evacuations in Brick, Stafford, and Long Beach townships, in Monmouth County as well, to the north of Ocean County. And now we have the opportunity to talk to Police Chief William Wist from North Wildwood in Cape May County. Chief Wist, what's the situation down there? Have you mandated evacuations yet?
Yes, we mandated earlier this evening, which was last night, and the town is pretty well cleared out. There's a few people holding on that feel that they're in safe structures, and the police department, we're here with a skeleton crew of about 6 men.
Have you had any specific problems to speak of to this point, or have those evacuations basically taken care of your people concerns?
The main thing we wanted to do is get the people out of here in case the ultimate comes. We won't be stuck trying to get them in the low-lying areas. Right now we have no police vehicles. We're using surplus military deuce and a halves, and that's all we have moving right now, 2 of them.
Chief Wist, do you have flooded streets as of yet? Is part of North Wildwood underwater, or is it still being contained in the beach area?
It's open for traffic on, I would say, our 2 major roads, north and south. The west side and the low-lying areas are flooded.
I know that your jurisdiction is North Wildwood, but you're down there. I am not. Can you give us any information about Wildwood and Wildwood Crest? What's the situation there? Is it much the same as you?
Probably about the same. I spoke with Captain Ostrander in Wildwood PD just a few minutes ago, and they're hanging in there along with us. They got about the same amount of manpower, and they're using a military vehicle.
Where are these military vehicles from specifically?
Well, ours belong to emergency management, the two that we have here locally. He got one from the National Guard Armory over in the mainland.
I know in Monmouth County there are a number of military bases, and they told us last night that they would be ready to mobilize military men and machines for any emergency service along the Barrier Island area. Do you know of any of those vehicles coming down into points south from Monmouth County?
I haven't seen any of them. As a matter of fact, I imagine they'd keep their heavy equipment for the cleanup procedure, because right now everything is at a standstill, and we're just keeping this. If it gets that bad with the snorkel on it, we may have to get out of here ourselves. So we're going to try and ride it out, even if we go to the second floor and use portable equipment.
Chief West, anything from Cape May itself? That's of course, the most southern location of Cape May County, particularly vulnerable. Have you heard anything from there?
I haven't heard anything lately, even on the radio. And I believe Wildwood Crest has shut down. The last I heard, they may have some people standing by, but their radio is off now.
How many people would you say are still in North Wildwood? You say you've mandated evacuations. Almost everybody is gone, but you know, it's the same kind of situation as the volcano at Mount St. Helens. Some people are just absolutely emphatic on wanting to stay and watch this thing happen, either out of curiosity or through some strange reasoning that they say this is their home, this is where they want to be. Is there a situation like that in North Wildwood, or have you managed to clear absolutely everybody out?
Yes, we had a little problem earlier, but now I think they have realized that by listening to one of our local radio stations, that a lot of your emergency equipment is gone. The emergency management people, rescue squad, and your fire departments have taken their equipment off the island because it's of no use to us now.
When you say evacuations, Chief, how many people actually are you talking about?
I have no idea. It was taken care of. We have contact points where everybody was taken in. They were logged in, name, address, and we had a bus. As soon as we got 35 people, we put them on the bus, and the bus would run them to the mainland, which would be Cape May Courthouse area. And then the county emergency management was setting up shelter areas over there. And that is all being taken care of over there. Well, all we have done here is notify them to evacuate. And I had all of our vehicles, before we moved some of them out of town, on the road with the lights and sirens and PA systems, trying to get people out before midnight so that we didn't have them in bed and have to wake them up. And it seemed to work fairly well.
All right. Safe and considerate, I might add. Thank you very much. William Wist, Chief of Police in North Wildwood, New Jersey. North Wildwood is now evacuated along with many other towns and communities on the barrier islands of the Jersey coast. We will continue to update the Hurricane Gloria story. It's coming our way when we continue with our special edition of Action News in just a minute. We've just received word from officials in Gloucester County. Gloucester County offices are closed today, including the courts, and officials in Gloucester County are asking all but essential personnel who work for the county to stay home. Again, Gloucester County is, for all intents and purposes, closed down today, including the court system. All but essential personnel, stay where you are. No reason to venture out into this dangerous storm. But Cathy Gandolfo has ventured out into this dangerous storm. She has been doing, what a job she's been doing on the boardwalk of Atlantic City, in between Convention Hall and what is now a rising surf. Cathy, anything new from there?
Well, Jim, it's interesting. It hasn't been that long since I talked to you last, but with each passing moment, it seems that more things are happening, more natural phenomenon, if you would, accompanying this storm. First of all, a co-worker said to me a short while ago, it's starting to sound like a hurricane, and in fact, it is. The wind is starting to howl. The ocean is obviously vicious. You have been seeing it now all morning. It keeps hitting the boardwalk. Something very interesting happened just a short while ago. The water is coming under the boardwalk with such force that it actually spurted through the cracks in the boardwalk, kind of like little geysers. I can assure you I've been coming down here for a lot of years and I've never seen anything like that happen before. Now, as far as the update on the road conditions, anybody who had any notion, I don't know why anybody would want to come here today, but anybody who had any notion to come to Atlantic City or to Absecon Island, this island is closed. No one is allowed into Atlantic City. The Black Horse Pike is now underwater. The White Horse Pike is now underwater. And we got this information just moments ago from Jim Maslin, who is the Emergency Management Director for the City of Atlantic City. The Atlantic City Expressway is still open, but probably not for long. As far as traffic leaving the city, there is very little traffic leaving the city on the Atlantic City Expressway, just some buses and some trucks. Now, a meeting is underway at this hour, actually a news conference. Our Harry Martin is there, and he will be filling us in on exactly what the latest briefing is from the city of Atlantic City. Reporting live from Atlantic City, I'm Cathy Gandolfo. Jim?
Kathy, before you go, we want to get to Karen Friedman over at the 69th Street Terminal in just a second to update the SEPTA situation in the Philadelphia area. But I have to ask you, grocery stores, gas stations, drugstores, it's 7:45, so I imagine most retail stores wouldn't be open at this time anyway, but gas stations, are they open at this time, or are they shut down, really bringing or contributing to a halt in vehicular transportation?
Jim, the latest word that I got, just about every store in this town from gas stations on were closed down. Now, there probably are one or two isolated cases where some of them are open, but for the most part, everything in this town is shut down. Now, you bring up certainly an interesting point about drugstores. I'm not quite sure about that, and I will check into that. But that is one of the reasons why we have been warning people the last couple of days to stock up on their prescription medicine if need be, because even if the stores are open, it's not going to be very easy to get out to those stores.
You know what you might check, Kathy, to see if Atlantic City Medical Center has a service where they can rush drugs to people who need them in the event that drugstores are not open. Maybe you could find that out, and we'll check back with you in just a little while.
Absolutely, we'll do.
All right, Kathy, let's go now to Karen Friedman back at the 69th Street Terminal in Upper Darby. It's getting lighter where you are, Karen. The question is, how is the transit situation holding up?
Well, the transit situation, Jim, is slowing down quite a bit. We just got word the 8:45 and the 8:55 SEPTA trolleys to Media and Sharon have been canceled. There will be no trolleys at 8:45 and 8:55. As far as what the rest of the day holds, probably not, but we'll have to wait and see. Once again, the Chestnut Hill West will not be running. The Norristown bus is running, we are told, but the train is not running. The Media Westchester lines all shut down, and it is really coming down out here. Traffic on Market Street is starting to slow down. The cabs are kind of just sitting here, nobody out to even take a taxi. Really coming down. In fact, we are just absolutely soaked to the gills. I think you can probably see my pants and my snow boots, and they're barely doing the trick. But at any rate, the transportation situation is starting to slow down. In fact, inside of Market Street, we were told by the police there that they have been there every morning, and the transportation situation this morning is extremely, extremely light. I'm Karen Friedman reporting live on the Action Cam at the 69th Street Terminal.
Obviously, the weather also affecting our microwave transmission from 69th Street. We'll be getting Karen back live, however, in the short future, in the not-too-distant future, to check up on the transit situation, and we'll find out at that point what the situation is on the Broad Street subway and the Market Frankfurt L. Last night, SEPTA said that it might have to suspend service on the Broad Street subway because of flooding of tracks. We'll check to see if that, in fact, is becoming the case this morning as we continue our coverage of Hurricane Gloria, now on its way to the Delaware Valley and the Jersey Shore, along with the Delaware coastline. We'll be back in just a minute. It is 7:50 on this Friday morning, September 27th, 1985. Years from now, they will talk about the hurricane of '85, much the same way they talk about the hurricane of 1944 at the Jersey coast. If you're looking at your clocks and wondering whether or not you have to go to school, we can tell you this much. No school today in Philadelphia public or archdiocesan schools. In Camden, public schools are out. As far as the Catholic school situation in Camden is concerned, it's up to the individual principal of respective schools. You'll have to check in with them to see whether or not you have classes this morning. In the western suburbs of Philadelphia, our assumption is that most of those school districts are closed, but again, we advise you to call to make sure. Obviously, along the coastal areas in South South Jersey and Delaware, where the storm has now forced the evacuation of most of those low-lying areas. Clearly, school is out for the day, and might be even tomorrow. We'll have to, well, obviously it'll be tomorrow. No, I'm not going to school tomorrow. It's Saturday. By Monday, things should be back in reasonable shape. Anyway, that's the school situation today. Things do tend to get a little bit confused as you go along here at this time of day, but that is the school situation. Let's check in now with a fellow by the name of Joe Conaway, who is the administrator of Sussex County in Delaware. He is at the Emergency Management Center in Georgetown, Delaware. Mr. Conaway, the situation there, particularly as it applies to evacuations.
Well, we have, through the night, been evacuating people all over the county, but primarily in the coastal area. At the present time, we have over 20 evacuation shelters established in fire halls, convention hall in Rehoboth, schools throughout the county. And almost 5,000 people now have taken advantage of that. Hopefully, most of the people in the low-lying areas got out when we asked them to, and we've been asking them to leave since Tuesday.
Let's try to get a lay of the land from you, sir, if you will. Describe for us the physical scenario there. How much of your area is underwater? What kinds of streets are passable or impassable? If you would give me a description physically of the Sussex County area.
The Sussex County is the coastal county in Delaware. The 23 miles of coastline is in our county. At the present time, the main north-south route along that coastline, the Route 1 as we refer to it, is underwater from Dewey Beach, which is just outside of Rehoboth, Dewey Beach south to Fenwick Island, and Fenwick Island is north of Ocean City. Ocean City, by the way, has been hit already, and there is some damage already to their boardwalk. We have not yet been advised of any damage along our coast area, but we have received flooding, as I say, along Route 1. Route 54 is an east-west route back from Fenwick Island back inland towards Route 113. That is already closed. We've had numerous limbs down. Even though the wind velocity has been only at the 25 to 30 mile an hour rate, we still have had some damage throughout the county, not just the coastal area, but throughout the county.
It's time, I think, to start asking you and our other sources of information about the power situation, the utility companies. How are they faring? Is there full power to Sussex County, or are you beginning to have outages along the way?
Well, so far, and I'm knocking on my head to knock on wood, we've had only one outage reported to us at this time, and that is been in Fenwick Island, and it's been on the ocean side of that town. So thus far, the utility companies and the utility lines have held. But again, the hurricane has not really hit us yet.
That's right.
We don't know what will come of it as a result of that. But so far, all services, all utilities, telephone, electric, are all up and operational. And of course, in our centers, we have established radio contact with them, so we would be able to talk to the shelters in the event we lose that. And we do have generators stationed strategically around the county that would be able to be moved in and provide electricity for those shelters. But thus far, Mother Nature has not dealt us a bad blow.
Joe Conaway, Sussex County Administrator at the Emergency Management Center in Georgetown, Delaware. We were talking about the utility situation down in the coastal areas of Delaware. Now let's talk about Philadelphia. Millions of customers for Philadelphia Electric. Action News reporter Rob Jennings is live at PE headquarters, the emergency center there. Rob, what's the situation as far as PE is concerned?
All quiet right now, Jim. Behind me, there's several dozen people who are ready to coordinate efforts with several hundred people out in the field in PE's coverage area. What's the status right now, Ron Harper?
Right now, the status is be prepared and await for the first customer calls to come in. And of course, the customer call takers will be the important link for our service area. As soon as there is trouble, we will be getting calls, and we'll be assigning crews to handle the work.
Okay, we've had 3 minor problems this morning, but you don't consider them storm-related?
We had a normal, in fact, a very light, rainy night. We can't blame that on Hurricane Gloria yet.
Okay, while we're here, though, let's go over the procedures again in case any of our viewers lose their power today. What should they do to get in touch with you?
Obviously, we can't prevent it from happening. We want to get out and fix it as quickly as possible. So a call to the company, and if you can, give us your account number off of your bill. That'll help us pinpoint the location of the trouble. I would like to point out that when the lines get crowded, you can't get through to us. Be patient. But if you're calling to report a line down, a wire down, please, if you can't get the electric company, try to get your local police department. It must be protected. No one must go near that line because even though it doesn't look alive, it could be lethal.
Okay, so there it is. So far, so good. No reports of storm-related power outages, but PE is ready for you if you need them. Live on the Action Cam in Center City, I'm Rob Jennings.
Thank you, Rob. Very, very good for a good report. Let's go to Gary Majors now, again on his perch on the Palace Hotel right off Ben Franklin Parkway. Gary, I assume that situation on the Schuylkill Expressway has only gotten worse. I can't imagine it's gotten any better. What's the story there?
Well, Jim, you couldn't have said it any better. The Schuylkill Expressway, which is off to my right, is jammed packed all the way back through the construction zone. In fact, the Vine Street extension, which feeds the westbound Schuylkill Expressway, is also jammed. However, that should serve as a notice to say that the weather is bad. Traffic, however, is very light for this time of the morning on any commuter day. We look down on the Ben Franklin Parkway and see that there's just a trickle of traffic coming into Center City when that highway at this time of the day would otherwise be very, very crowded. We're also noticing that many of the parking garages in the area have fewer than normal cars, which also serves as a signal to say that maybe many people are just getting the message and trying to avoid coming out in this weather today. In fact, it is raining very heavily here on the Ben Franklin Parkway, and it is getting very, very dark. That's it from here now, Jim. I'm Gary Majors, Channel 6 Action News, reporting live on the Action Cam from the Ben Franklin Parkway.
All right, let's try an almost impossible job, and that is to recap the situation in just a minute or two before we then present our special edition of Action News at 8 o'clock. The situation is this, according to AccuWeather. Gloria has picked up some steam. It is going to move into our area just a little bit faster than we had expected earlier this morning. The brunt of the storm, as we will get it, should be here by about 11 o'clock this morning. That's bad news. The good news is that Gloria should be out of our area a bit sooner than had been anticipated. And so it's a quicker, a faster moving storm at this point than we had expected earlier this morning. Again, she'll be coming up through Delaware first into the Jersey Shore area. We have reporters staked out throughout the entire area, both along the shore, along the coastal areas, and inland in Philadelphia itself. As we have been telling you today, virtually all the shore communities on the barrier islands of New Jersey and along Delaware have now been evacuated. So far, we have had reports of smooth evacuation procedures. We have had no reports of any injuries, any casualties at this point. There was one particular problem, and that was the evacuation of some 600 residents of Atlantic City, New Jersey, into the Uptown Center, which is normally a community center being used as a shelter. Unfortunately, that turned out to be a low-lying area as well, and so those residents are now being moved for a second time to another area farther inland in Atlantic City. They were not happy with that situation, as you can well imagine. But evacuations are taking place. The brunt of the storm should be in our area by about 11 o'clock. That should be 3 hours from now. So whatever it is doing outside now, and it is not pleasant, it is raining hard, it is only going to get worse before it gets better. Again, coming up in just 1 minute, a special edition of Action News at 8 o'clock. For now, I'm Jim Gardner.